We see that also with environment, right? So I remember when I was in school, in elementary school, we were taught that we were all going to be frozen over by an ice age, and of course,
Trump says that the global cooling movement was in the 20s. It was actually in the late 70s, had to do with the ozone layer at one point, and chlorohydrocarbons was the issue at the time because we were producing a ton of those. We stopped and it changed. It literally, we don't hear about that hole anymore because we were making it. We literally made a public shift worldwide and it actually worked.
of course, this was terrifying. And then in the 80s, it was acid rain. We were all going to die from the acid rain.
Nobody said we were all going to die from the acid rain. Acid rain is an acute problem, not a global problem. This is just dumb.
And then it moved to global warming, which I think...
Which it didn't move to global warming. Global warming was the descriptive for it because that is actually what's happening. But it is causing climate change, which is causing shocks in the weather that make it spike and drop, which makes the earth uninhabitable until we all get cooked.
You know, most of the people watching this tape will remember that was during the Obama administration.
Yes.
And then...
Yeah, I remember that.
Science comes along and disproves the global warming theory. And
do they? Why don't you just... Hey, you know what? This is about language. You don't have to hold up any documentation that science disproves global warming, she says.
Large part. And we have one of the most frigid winters ever known. And then...
We do. And no, we don't. But let's just say we do. You do recognize the rest of the world overall getting warmer, the entirety of it getting warmer, causing never mind.
And the next thing you know, they're calling it climate change. Now, I always understood that climate change meant seasons.
No. Seasons change means seasons. Seasons are just called seasons. The climate contains all the seasons. I don't know if you know this, but Christmas in Australia is very different. First of all, Santa's sleigh goes counterclockwise.
Climate does change all the time, but of course that's not what's meant.
No, it doesn't. Seasons change all the time. Weather changes all the time. Climate does not.
By the left.
Or it shouldn't.
What do you think about about the left's words and definitions?
I know what you're thinking. Yeah. Did she do any thinking? No.
In the environment.
It's a great point, Katie.
They
don't stop.
They don't.
Climate change allegedly is everywhere. And if the American people elect...
Well, the climate is everywhere, so it would kind of have to be, I think.
A conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere.
That's a priority. Eradicate climate change references everywhere. Don't even talk about it.
And according to our intelligence community, the #1 threat facing our country today is, drumroll, climate change. Not Russia, not China, not AI, climate change.
Climate change. Like the climate is going to destabilize some countries as they lose fresh water and people fight over resources and terrorism goes up and people flee and there's large migrations caused by spikes in heat in certain areas where there's already a very little resources, and that those conflicts create cultural conflicts that lead to other countries fighting over who can weaponize those migrant communities against each other and that kind of stuff. That is I don't know, it sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me. Why would they even care?
This shows how the federal government is all in on this issue. And climate change activists wield a lot of power. This is an issue to pay attention.
Yeah. Like you can't go to the White House without bumping into Al Gore. He's fucking everywhere.
To, as it has infiltrated every part of the federal government. Now, when I think of climate change, I immediately think of population control, don't you?
No, I don't. And that's why I would like to say for the record, that's why these ladies are just straight up insane. Now, and what a leap, right? Again, this is a training video about how the left twists language When I think of climate change, I think of population control. I guess the theory is they want people to have more abortions because they think the planet will be unlivable. So if they trick you into thinking we're all going to boil alive, you won't have babies. And by the way, you'll get pregnant first, though. You won't use contraceptives. You'll just get pregnant and then scrape it out.
I think about the people who don't want you to have children because of the impact on the environment.
Yeah, there's like 9 of those people.
Perhaps not everyone will make that connection, but after spending time in the international space trying to protect life, I can tell you that this is part of their ultimate goal, to control people. Let me share a personal example of how...
Okay, there was an edit there, just so you know, because I think she went into this and they were like, I don't... First of all, your first telling of it was kind of gross. Can you back up and then tell it in more of a corporate way? Sure.
The left seeks to permeate every dimension of life through their skewed terminology and definition.
You mean that something like climate change means population control? You mean something wacky like that?
When I arrived at USAID, I had a career employee ask me how many children I had. I thought it was a bit odd of a question, but to be kind, I answered, and I said I had 3 children. And he actually said to me, "Oh, wow, 1.5 too many for the environment."
I call bullshit. 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 Just gibberish. I'll tell you what happened. During a meeting of talking about population and how in third world countries, resources stretch too far and blah, blah, blah. Somebody said something along the lines of, if we give people in Africa or parts of the South, like Sudan and places like that, access to, to regular contraception, they won't have too many children, they won't have as many starve to death and blah, blah, blah. And somebody on her side of the aisle made that joke to her later. Or it's just complete bullshit.
I smiled and I said very politely, if I could have 10 more children, I would. The policy book captures the
again, gibberish.
essence of climate change. And I quote, "In the name of combating climate change, policies have been used to create an artificial energy scarcity that will require trillions of dollars in new investment, supported with taxpayer subsidies to address a problem that government and special interests themselves have created."
By the way, that mandate for leadership is part of the Project 2025 book. That's in there. Just letting you know.
Page 300.
It's honest to God, it's the Dianetics of fucking politics.
64. End of quote. Population growth, environmental changes, and weather patterns have all been intertwined by the left. They take or even make up a term and create, extend, and alter the definition to validate whatever ideology or position they want to ingrain and convince others is good, when
which is our fucking job.
in reality, it's not. Often, as you just heard.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, people talking about climate change are not talking about population control. They aren't.
They are simply not coherent or logical. Remember,
Speaking of not coherent and logical, I have another question for you.
our intelligence community identified climate change as the #1 threat to America. So even if you do not work at the Department of Energy, no matter where you work, because of the Biden administration's executive orders and policy priorities, you will have to look for climate change language and get rid of it.